Today I would like to talk about diversity in the immune system. The immune system is an amazing system. It keeps us healthy, it protects us from all types of different infections. It's also very costly. We invest a lot in having our immune system. We have about 1.8 trillion cells that are immunological, of about 100 different types, and fully 10% of our genome encodes genes that are involved in protecting us against infections. Now, all of this system, it only weighs about 1.2 kilos. So we've got about a kilo of cells that are distributed across our body, but that comes at a cost. Those cells are burning up 18% of all of our daily nutrients, our daily calorie intake. And that's just if they're sitting there on the lookout waiting for an infection. If they're actually combating an infection, well, in that case, they can be using up to 70% of our calories in order to fight off the infection. Now, the immune system is diverse. Of course it is. All biological systems are diverse. All biological systems have variability. You can think about something like height. You'll have people who are an average height, but you also have lots of people who are a little bit taller, a lot of people who are a little bit shorter, and then you have some people that are really at the extremes of that bell curve. They're very, very tall and very, very short. Now, the immune system is 10,000 times more variable than any other trait that you can think of. Any of the visible traits that make people look different, the immune system is much more variable. If we think of it this way, if the immune system was height, the level of variation would mean that the tallest person would be able to step over Mount Everest, while the shortest person would be shorter than the width of a human hair. That is how variable the immune system is from person to person. So why is the immune system so diverse? Well, it comes down to evolution. And evolution is a competition. Now we can think of this competition in macro terms, such as the battle between gazelle and cheetah on the Serengeti. Now there's going to be a competition. There's going to be diversity in how fast the gazelle can run, and it's going to be the slowest gazelle that get eaten by the cheetah. That of course means the population gets a little bit faster each generation. At the same time, of course, there's variation in how fast a cheetah can run, and the slowest cheetah is going to have the fewest offspring, so the population gets faster over time, and this replicates again and again in what's called an evolutionary arms race, where the prey have to evolve to get faster and the predators evolve to get faster. Now, of course, this is a very simplistic relationship, and actually there are many different ways that a prey species can learn to evade a predator. They can be optimizing speed, they can optimize strength, they could optimize intelligence, other factors, a combination of factors. Evolution between humans and, say, bacteria is essentially the same type of evolution, only where the gazelle and the bacteria are the cheetah. Each generation, both sides can get stronger. The problem is, this is a competition we can't win, because our generation time is roughly 20 years, while bacterial generation time is about 20 minutes. So if you think of us being the gazelle, that bacteria that is the cheetah that's preying on us, it can optimize towards our immune system, get better at dealing with our immune system, go to the next person, that next person has the same immune system, they can optimize and get better and better. And as they go from person to person, if all of those people have the same immune response, that bacteria will become hyper optimized at beating that immune response. And we cannot win a battle of generations with bacteria unless our strategy is to be diverse. So you can think of the bacteria as being the cheetah, and the cheetah is doing fine as long as every prey is a gazelle. But if it goes onto a person who is optimizing a different strategy, such as strength, being a wildebeest, then that bacteria is going to do very poorly. Or it might go on to another person who is taking the route of intelligence and cooperation. And again, the prior optimization that the bacteria has had will serve that bacteria very poorly in that new host. So by being immunologically diverse, by having every person have a different immune system, we create a system where the bacteria cannot hyper-optimize. It cannot beat us through evolution, because one of our strategies, deeply encoded in our genome, is for our immune system to be different from person to person. The more diverse our immune systems are, the less pathogens can specialize. So diversity is not just a biological feature of the immune system the way it is for all other biological systems. No, diversity for us is a key strategy for us to survive infections. Now I want to talk a little bit about our research in what makes people different in terms of their immune system. And one of the ways I want to visualize this is to think about something that I'll call immunological space. So you can imagine that there are a couple of different people here, the person in red and the person in blue, and that they can have different types of immune response. So the same way that a prey species can optimize speed, or it can optimize strength or intelligence, our immune system might prioritize what we call type 1 immunity or type 2 immunity, type 3 immunity, humoral immunity, which is antibodies. And you can visualize this by thinking that every spot on this map is a different profile of immune response that a person could take up. Now, what we've found is that the profile that individuals have is actually very stable. So here we tested the immune state in 200 individuals, and we tested them over 6 months. And what we found is that essentially someone who is occupying a certain immune profile, that profile is very stable for them. They're going to operate inside that same immune constellation over a prolonged period of time. And so we can kind of visualize this by thinking about individuals. They might vary a little bit day to day, but generally, if someone is optimizing type 1 immunity, that's their strategy for the long term, while someone else might be optimizing type 2 immunity. We also know that this immune response is not fixed. People do actually change their immune response if the bacteria or the virus that they encounter needs it, but they tend to rebound back to their old status. And the way we studied this was what we call the fun holiday study, where we took 50 individuals. They were traveling to a high-risk country for gastroenteritis. We sampled them before their holiday and after their holiday, and then we could look at individuals who were sick versus individuals who were healthy. And essentially what we saw is, again, people have a little bit of variation. When they get sick, their immune systems change, but afterwards they were defaulting back to their same old status. So what drives this immune diversity? We know that we are different from person to person. That difference is long-term, it's stable, it's resilient. But what actually causes us to be different? Well, there's some known knowns and some unknown knowns and some unknown unknowns. But essentially, what we find is that about a third of it is genetic, about half of it is environment, and then a little bit is just really unknown. Now, genetics is pretty important. It's about 30% of our variation. And we know this from different twin studies, where essentially you can take identical twins that have got all of their genes the same versus fraternal twins where they're only sharing about half their genes, half their genetic variation. And then you can measure how different their immune responses are. And it turns out about 30% of our difference in our immune response is genetic. Although very few of these are actually known differences. We know they're genetic, but we know very little of the exact changes in our DNA that drive differences in our immune system. Age is also quite important. It's about 10% of the variation, and there are predictable changes that occur over the course of decades. So while our immune system is stable over months and years, over the course of decades it does change in a pretty predictable manner. And then we know at least 50% of the effect is environmental. And we know this from a study that we did, we call the parenting study, where essentially what we're able to do is show that people had quite different immune systems. And then if they got together, they had a child together, they started living together, the amount of difference between their immune systems converged. It reduced by about half. So that means that about half of their about half of their variation in the immune system was caused by changes in their environment, which went away when they started living together. So overall, the key points for this is that our immune system is absolutely amazing. You know, we have 1 trillion cells that are dispersed across our body, but they can self-organize into a killing machine that is absolutely optimized for killing off bacteria and viruses that threaten us. Now, this machine is not only self-organizing under every infection, but it can self-organize in many, many different ways. And the default mechanism that it organizes is hypervariable. It's different from individual to individual. And that is a very, very good thing. We absolutely want our immune system to be organizing differently in every individual. Now, our personal immune response, the default that we take as individuals, this is shaped by our genes, it's shaped by our environment, it's shaped by our age. There is an effect of sex. It's a relatively minor role, and it's probably overestimated. Actually, gender is likely to be more important because as gender changes the type of environments that we're in, it will change the inputs that our immune system has. And ultimately, there's a huge amount that we still don't know. We would love to know more about what makes the immune system individualized and how we can change that with, say, lifestyle interventions in order to overcome particular susceptibility to infections or autoimmune diseases or the like. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion of immune diversity.